Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. During the last year, 2012, I did like 6 different director's series, and I'm going to be slowing down a little bit this year. I've got some other stuff planned for the year, so I don't want to take huge amounts of time posting videos on movies like 2 or 3 times a week. But I wanted to do a series this year because this being the year that I turned 40 years old, I decided I was going to look back at movies that came out that year, 1973, the year I was born. So during the course of the year, this is going to be sort of an open-ended series. Probably be picking up films where I find them throughout the year and reviewing them maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, something like that. But I decided to start with The Sting, which won Best Picture of the 1973 films. It was directed by George Roy Hill. It stars Paul Newman and Robert Redford, of course. George Roy Hill also directed Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which starred Robert Redford and Paul Newman. Slaughterhouse-Five, which is an adaptation of the current Vonnegut novel, if I remember correctly. Slapshot, also with Paul Newman. The World According to Garp with Robin Williams. And his last film was Funny Farm, a Chevy Chase comedy. He died in 2002. So 1973, the movie actually takes place in Chicago, 1936. And that was really cool because, of course, I live in Chicago, so I was checking all the street intersections and what have you to see if I could recognize everything. Of course, not only was it made 40 years ago, but it's dressed up to look like the 1930s, so that makes it even more out of time. But a little bit I did recognize. They had an L station actually. In one scene, they're running around over it and on top of it, and at one point you see a train come through, and it's just basically 2 cars instead of 8 cars, which is what we have nowadays. So that was interesting. The Sting, of course, is about con artists. Robert Redford is the main character. He starts off the film working with a couple of guys, ripping off a courier for the mob that's running numbers, basically. The guy had $11,000 in an envelope, and they run this scam where this guy appears to have been attacked, and they switch money with him, and so then Robert Redford has a lot of heat put on him by the mob. Robert Shaw, who played Quint in Jaws, he's the head of the mob. His name is McConnell, I think. I've seen this movie one time before, a really long time ago, so going into it I remember the premise, but not a whole lot aside from that. I remembered, the leads, obviously, and I remembered the musical theme, and I remembered this gesture. All the con men go like this to sort of signal to each other, and I remember the twist at the end, so I was sort of anticipating that reveal at the end, which I won't get into, of course. But seeing as how this is about con artists, it's all about duping this guy into fooling him into giving up basically some cash, a lot of cash, and then making him, think like he can't get it back or whatever. When after Robert Redford rips off the money from the mob courier, the mob sends a couple of guys to retaliate. They chase after Robert Redford. He barely escapes, but his partner, a guy named Luther, an old-timer named Luther, gets thrown out of his apartment window. Now, before Luther died, he said that he was getting out of the game, and he said, listen, Robert Redford, if you want to make it big, go to Chicago and see this guy, Paul Newman, because he really knows the score up there. It can teach you a lot. So after Luther dies, Robert Redford's like, I'm going to Chicago, I'm going to get together with Paul Newman, and I'm going to figure out a way to get this mobster back again, because he killed, this guy I've known for a long time. So the two of them, they get together and they start to work out this scam in Chicago, whereby they're going to fool the mobster into plunking down a whole bunch of cash on a bet that supposedly he can't lose. They have this whole scam worked out. They've got this whole fake off-track betting office all rigged up with all their own people. All these con artists are working there pretending to be guys just betting on the game. And it's this real complicated scam involving a card game that Paul Newman has to go in and win. And then Robert Redford has to pretend to be working for him, but scared of him and wanting to betray him and getting in with a mobster. convincing him to get in on the scam so he could win a bunch of money. Very, very complicated. I had a little trouble keeping track of it, of everything that was happening, and I pride myself on being able to follow all this stuff. And with con artist movies, you know, one of my favorite con artist movies actually is Matchstick Men, which was actually being reviewed by one of the guys on the Movie Reviewers 100. We're doing Sam Rockwell week, so I kind of, you know, I was that's one thing that I was excited about. I like movies about con artists, but the Sting breaks the rule of con artists, of con artist movies, and that is that the cardinal rule of any movie about con artists is that it's always the main character who's being conned. Well, that's not the case with the Sting. The main characters are the con artists, even if most of the time, even if the main characters are con artists themselves, they wind up getting conned, which is what happens in Matchstick Men, but that doesn't happen here. But yeah, it's an enjoyable movie. Pretty light. You know, I mean, they're out to get revenge against this guy, but overall, it's a pretty light movie, not terribly serious, you know, just generally pretty low, although the consequences could be high, you never really sort of get the sense that anyone's in any real danger. You know, there's some tense moments in there, but it isn't, it's not a dark film, that's for sure. It's especially not dark. Some of the actors I wanted to also mention in this movie, of course, Robert Shaw was in Jaws. You've got Charles Durning, who died recently. It was like Christmas Eve, I think, when he died. He plays a cop who gets slipped some funny money, some forged bills by Robert Redford. So he comes up from Joliet to Chicago to pursue him. You've got Ray Walston, who's an old-time actor who I've liked in a lot of stuff. Especially, I remember him from the Judd Nelson legal comedy From the Hip. He was a judge in that movie. Eileen Brennan, I thought that I recognized her from Superman 3, but actually she wasn't in that movie. However, she did play Mrs. Peacock in the comedy Clue, based on the board game. I've seen that movie a bunch of times. And then there's an actor who I recognized right away. His name is Jack Kehoe, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's been a character actor in a bunch of movies that I've seen, such as Midnight Run with Robert De Niro, and The Paper with Michael Keaton, and he co-starred with Michael Douglas in a couple movies, Falling Down in The Game. The Game is actually his last credit on IMDb, so I don't know if he is retired or whatever, but he hasn't acted since then. There's nothing about him dying on IMDb, so apparently he's still around, but he just hasn't acted since then. Anyway, I remember him best from Young Guns 2. He played an alcoholic newspaperman in Young Guns 2, and William Peterson, as Pat Garrett, recruits him to ride along with him on the hunt for Billy the Kid. And he's like, ride along with you on a horse? He doesn't like that idea at all. He's used to staying in one spot and working in an office rather than going out on the trail. But it's great seeing him. He's a fun actor, so some of these guys were fun to see. So yeah, there's my take on The Sting. A fun movie, Best Picture material. You know, it's won Best Picture. It's a well-made movie, but it didn't really, you know, stick with me the kind that the best movies I've seen have done. Pretty, like I said, fairly light movie, despite some of the possible serious consequences. A pretty light movie overall. So yeah, that's The Sting. And I'll be doing more 1973 movies. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of Oscar nominees over the next few weeks because it's Oscar season. Why not? Let's start with them. I've, you know, been looking at IMDb and all the nominees and what have you, so I've got a nice list to choose from. Some of the other movies that came out in '73 include, of course, The Exorcist, and there was a Bond movie that came out there. I believe it was Live and Let Die. Which got the Oscar nomination for Best Song for Paul McCartney. But there's a whole bunch of others besides that. Directing nominees, acting nominees, whatever. So I'll be going through and seeing as many of those as I can. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll tune in for future episodes of this series. I wanted to mention that one of my compadres on the Movie Reviewers 100, James, aka DVD Collector 1974, is actually doing a series kind of like mine, only he's reviewing one movie per year since the year that he was born. So you should check him out as well. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to go over the Movie Reviewers 100 because I'm wrapping up Sam Rockwell week, so you've got a bunch of good reviews from him. I've got a new theme starting, of course, the next day. So thanks for watching. I'll see you again real soon. Bye.